Welcome to the Hockey Writers Podcast. We're your favorite Hockey Writers contributors, discuss the hottest topics around the NHL and hockey world every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Listen on iHeartRadio and wherever you get your podcasts, and check out our other great content at thehockeywriters.com. I'm your host, Kyle Knopp, joined by my co-host, Matthew Zator, and today we have a special guest, Brock McGillis. Brock, thank you for joining us. Brock is the first openly gay professional athlete and an activist for inclusion in hockey. So how are you today? And thank you again for coming out to our show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Excellent. Prospect camps are going on right now, and we'll probably pick your brain a little bit at the end of our show on that. But yeah, hockey's one week closer. So we are very excited over here. Well, let's jump right into it, Brock. You've started working recently with junior leagues in Canada to help promote inclusion and acceptance at all levels of hockey. So can you talk to these projects you started and speak to what these entail?
Yeah, so I've been, I guess I came out in 2016 as the first openly gay men's professional hockey player to come out, which is wild. But shortly thereafter, I started getting calls to speak. Before I knew it, I was going to schools, events, corporations, sports teams across the globe. It started off mostly in Canada, predominantly in Ontario, and then it sort of just took off. And pre-COVID, when COVID hit, I was on the road, and I'd been on the road for 44 straight weeks. It was intense, and but I love it. I mean, I'm so grateful for it, and I have a passion for creating shifts in sports, and specifically when I'm in Canada, hockey. And I do junior teams and minor hockey teams and whatnot here. I was at the Sabres development camp, working with their prospects. I worked with the Leafs a couple of years ago, and I do stuff at all levels of the sport. I've gone into the US and worked with a bunch of athletic departments, including like Miami of Ohio and different places like that. So it just sort of happened, I guess. Somebody reached out at a high school, and before I knew it, my career changed. I had 3 hockey businesses. I was doing off-ice training. I was working with about 100 athletes a day. I did on-ice skill development and goalie training. And then from there, I transitioned fully into speaking and advocacy work and doing some other stuff. I had a show with RuPaul's Drag Race for a little bit that we've done 2 seasons of so far. And so it just sort of took off, and now leagues are calling. I mean, I'm going in, I believe, in pretty soon to speak with the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. I go to major junior clubs across all of Canada, and I spoke at the Memorial Cup last year, and things are just continuously evolving and growing, and it's a lot of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like you're really busy. I mean, you say on the road for what? But what'd you say, 45?
40.
Yeah, 44 straight weeks when COVID hit. I mean, COVID gave me some downtime, but it allowed me to work on other projects that I was passionate about that hopefully will be coming to fruition soon, that I can't speak on just yet. But it is busy, but it's like I go from, like, next week I'm speaking to a group. The week after I'm in Manitoba at high schools and a college. The week after, and then I'm in Ottawa, and then I just keep going, and it just doesn't stop. But I love it.
It's all for good purpose.
I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change a thing.
That's awesome.
Nice. You say you can't speak to the stuff that you're kind of coming up on, but what are your immediate 5-year, 20-year goals for what you're doing with inclusion? I mean, it's everywhere now. I mean, it's a big thing, and like you say, you're really busy with a lot of stuff, and it's just, I don't think it's going to stop. I think, and it's great to see all this stuff kind of going on. So what are your goals for all this and inclusion and all that stuff?
Yeah, thank you. My 5-year goal is to get hockey to the point in terms of hockey. Since it's a hockey podcast, I'll start there. I want to get hockey to a point where we don't have to conform to this idea of what the culture is, where individuals can be themselves, regardless of their race, gender, sexuality, regardless of what they enjoy in their private time. Like I look at a guy like Dougie Hamilton. And you think about Dougie Hamilton and how he doesn't conform to the culture, and from everything I gather, it's partially why he's been traded twice. And who wouldn't want a 6'5" right-hand shot defenseman that puts up over a point a game and can skate? Like it baffles my mind. But he doesn't go drinking with the boys on the road, so you'd rather go to a museum or read books. Like that should be okay.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're all conforming, and I'll tell you this much, it's not who any of these players truly are. We're all adhering to norms that aren't really who we are and in this culture. And corporate culture, who's ahead of sports culture, is starting to recognize that. So I want to get to a point where we realize what playing for the logo on the front really means. And to me, that really means embracing our teammates for who they are, as opposed to who the culture says they should be. And if we do that, we're actually playing for, because now we're not putting judgment on somebody, because that's more selfish than somebody being their authentic self. So I think we need to flip the script on what playing for the logo on the front actually is. And by doing that, and by embracing and celebrating people for their differences, you kind of are. Because whether you fully agree with them, whether it's what you want to do, whether just allowing them to be themselves without judgment or ridicule is helping them be happy, and then they'll play their best, which ultimately helps the team. And when we get to that point, and this is an oversimplification, but when we get to that point, I think we'll be less likely to judge minority folks. And more people are going to embrace the sport and feel welcomed in it and want to be a part of it. So that would be, is that 20 years? I hope not. I don't think I can wait that. I'll tap out at some point. But in 5 years, I think we can get to the point where, personally with my brand, that we're doing this and humanizing and breaking barriers to conformity all over, where the not-for-profit I'm a part of starting, that I kind of founded, is empowering queer folks within hockey, and we're getting people on boards at every level of the sport. So we have seats at the table, where we finally get it to a point where it's a safe space for queer youth to play the sport. Because I look at hockey and I think of this story. This trans boy came to me a few years back, and he was self-harming. He was cutting himself daily. And there's, a lot of self-harm in my communities, in the LGBTQ plus community. And he then found bodybuilding and weightlifting. And anytime he felt down, he went to the gym. And it helped him feel good. It helped him not, when he had those moments of feeling down and having dysphoria and all these different things, he would just go and release it. And I feel like that's how a lot of folks feel in hockey when they go to the rink. Nothing else matters once you get in the locker room and then on the ice. Nothing else matters. It's just the boys or the girls, and then you go on the ice and you play, and nothing else matters. Well, and when the kid told me that story, I thought to myself immediately, I said, why isn't that hockey in Canada? Especially in Canada. Like I understand it, like ideally everywhere, but like it's so embedded in our culture. Why isn't it here? Why isn't it an empowerment tool for all the way it is for some? And imagine if we got it to be. Not, I don't care if that kid ends up being a professional bodybuilder and, makes tons of money and is the next Arnold. Doesn't matter. right? But every day he feels good when he goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what hockey should be. And that's what it is, because less than 1% of people who play the sport are going to make it time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you got to feel good going there, or why are you going? And if we could get hockey to be that, and that's sort of, you know, the goal right now for me is have it become an empowerment tool for queer and for youth in general.
I love that. I mean,
Yeah.
as someone that's been around the sport for 33 years, like hockey's always been one of my outlets. You know, I knew I was never going to play professionally, but I still always chased the dream of wanting to work around it and make it my career, right? And I found a way to do it in a different type of way. But yeah, it's always been my release, and that I think you're absolutely right. It needs to be a safe space for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
So, as someone that also is a coach of a young girls travel team, I coach a U14 AAA travel team. You know, I'm always trying to accept the differences, show that we're all different, but we can all work together as a team. But what are some other ways that players or coaches or organizations, even as a whole, can take that first step in making their team more inclusive?
I think it's breaking down barriers of conformity. So now, like when I go work with teams or leagues, I'll typically do a breakout. And it's easier when it's more of a team than the league as a whole. But I think that the people running the leagues should take this with their, you know, corporate side and everything else. When I've humanized what it's like to be a gay man in those locker rooms and in that culture and the impact it had on me in my career, and then I showed them ways that they can become shift makers, because I think we can all create shifts. And I can get into that in a second, because it also answers, you know, your question. But after that, I asked them, I go, tell me something you typically wouldn't tell a teammate that you enjoy. Because every team I've been on, I'm going to focus on boys or men's hockey here for a second. Every team I've been on, they use analogies like we're family or brothers.
Yeah.
And I feel like the women's side does similar things. But on the boys and men's side, like you're allowed to talk about 4 different things in the locker room: women, video games, partying, and sports.
Yeah.
Anything other than that is taboo. You know, you might as well be the gay guy. But they all have more substance and depth than that to them. They all enjoy more things. So I had one team, a major junior player that was a tough guy, stood up and said, I love writing poetry. Another player who was going on to the NHL said, if I don't make the NHL, I want to be a zoologist. And a first-year player jumped out of his seat and said, I love animal documentaries. And now they're bonding on a deeper level.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I had another team I went to, and all of a sudden, first player's like, I like lacrosse. And I'm like, yeah, that's hockey without skates. It's literally the same.
Yeah.
But then the coach said, I sing in a band. And then a player said, oh, I play the piano. Another player's like, I play the guitar when I'm home alone. And I'm like, okay, we're starting a band. I'm going to manage you. But, you know, we're seeing that we all have more to us that we enjoy doing. And players tell me about reading books. Players tell me about the rom-coms they watch and make their girlfriends watch. And, you know, I've had players talk to me about RuPaul's Drag Race, like straight hockey bros. And it's, and when we start to do that, and start to embrace how different we truly are and how we, you know, this idea of the norm isn't real, I think we can start to see shifts. And then beyond that, I think we can all create shifts. So to me, I look back at, after I retired from playing, I was living in Sudbury, Ontario. It's where I'm from. I started hockey training business, and I hid my sexuality. I didn't want anyone to know, because I feared that people wouldn't want their children working with me. And for about 5 years, I thought I was doing a really good job. And then I got a call from a hockey mom. And she said, Brock, I want to set you up on a date. And at this point, the business was pretty successful. I was working with close to 100 players daily. Like, you know, it's a lot of players. I had a bunch of people working with me, and it was pretty. It was doing really well. And I said, "What's her name?" And she said, "Steve." And my heart started racing. I broke out into a full sweat, and I was panicked. And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Brock, you're gay." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she became impatient. She's like, "You're really gay." And I just went, and my mind started racing. I'm like, all these players aren't going to want to work with me anymore. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay these people that work for me? Like, how am I going to pay my bills?
Yeah.
And I was freaking out. And then I calmed myself down. And I thought, wait, all these hockey bros know engaged just to work with me. It's pretty cool. So I started to, I thought about telling them, and instead I decided to observe their behaviors, kind of like animals in the wild or hockey players in their natural habitat.
Yeah.
And then I started to recognize that anytime they'd say something homophobic, which is fairly often in the culture, they would freeze up and apologize to me. I thought, cool. Maybe it's been humanized now for them. They know this gay guy, Brock, who's in hockey, and they're apologizing to me and they're recognizing it. So we're starting to see a little bit of an evolution here. And I thought, or maybe they just apologize to me, but they go to the rink or they go to school or to parties and call kids fags. And genuinely, I had no idea until one day I wasn't there and I had a sprint coach working with some athletes on a track. At the end of a 2-hour workout, he told them they had 10 more sprints. And a younger player who comes from a very progressive household looked up the sprint coach and said, "This is so gay. I can't believe you're making us do this." And an older player who was probably a little less progressive at that point and more immersed in hockey culture. Well, I wouldn't say he's less progressive, but more immersed in hockey culture. He was playing the OHL and different things. Looked at the younger player and said, "We don't say that here. Give me 50 push-ups." And that became something my athletes adopted amongst themselves. The younger player said, "You're right," and dropped down to 50 push-ups. Wow. And then they started bringing it to their friends at school. They started bringing it to their teammates. They brought it to their friends that they hung out with outside of school in hockey.
That's amazing.
Before I knew it, people I didn't even know were doing push-ups. One of the younger players, his teammate one night was on FaceTime with his girlfriend. And she said, "Let's hang out." And he said, "No, I can't. I have practice." And she said, "That's okay. You never want to hang out with me." And he looked at her and said, "Give me 50 push-ups right now. We're breaking up." And legit, they both dropped down and did 50 push-ups on the spot.
That's amazing.
So it taught me that we can all create shifts. And that one player telling another player to do push-ups one day, I was creating a shift in them without even knowing it. And ultimately, they created a shift in me to recognize that I could create larger scale change. That one player saying that to a guy in Sudbury, Ontario in 2015 or 2016 had a snowball effect that like has me sitting here with you now. So, there's 3 ways that I see shifts really happening. It's humanization. It's thinking about those people in our life that are part of those communities and like, how would they feel if they heard us acting or saying things in this way? The environment we create, the language we use, etc. And when that includes like body language, attitudes, behaviors. And then breaking down those barriers to conformity. And if we, those are simple things we can do that aren't really that complicated to create shifts and to make all those spaces safer and more inclusive and where everyone feels good coming in.
I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that whole story was that was really good. So I agree. If everyone can, because everyone can, I agree. Everyone can create shifts, and it's just a little thing like that, massive change, right? So
you never know the impact of it, and you probably will never know. I mean, there's a snowball effect that I've worked with people who've come out in the sport and outside the sport since, and help people from who are self-harming and talking about dying by suicide. And that one guy one day saying, "Give me 50 push-ups" has led to all that. So you don't even know the impact that your words can have if you just decide to stand up.
It is as simple as that too, right? So well, unfortunately we have to talk about the next thing here, and the stuff that's going on with Hockey Canada. facing a lot of criticism for how they handle sexual assault allegations that have come up recently. What has been your experience with Hockey Canada as a LGBTQ plus athlete?
It hasn't been good.
Mm.
Quite candidly, I mean, I don't believe that they. I've sat down with them on a number of occasions. I sat down with people that are pretty high up there when I had initially come out and said, we should do this, like what I do now. And they're like, well, how can you do all that? And you can't be everywhere. And I said, no, I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And they just kind of laughed at me. And I am everywhere. And I am doing it. But I am, and I'm doing it because my will to shift this is greater than the, time and effort that it takes. More recently, a year ago, I sat down with Tom Rennie, and I flat out told him, I said, Tom, your programs and your EDI initiatives are garbage. I believe I used that word. I said, your online modules are dated, and maybe at one point they were good. And I'm not disputing that. I said, but they're far past their time. I said, we're not doing enough. We're not shifting the culture. You're seeing a decrease in enrollment on the boys and men's side of hockey annually in Canada. I said, Tom, I coached, I ran businesses in this space, and I said, I mute your modules, your education stuff, and I answer the questions at the end because they're so boring and they're not impactful at all.
Yeah.
I said, if you can't get me, whose whole life is based on this stuff and is wrapped into this stuff, to engage with your content, how are you getting anyone else?
Yeah.
It kind of fell on deaf ears, and nothing ever. I believe he said to me, write me an email and tell me how great of a conversation we had.
No.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I just sort of laughed and said,
yeah, I mean, how do you respond to that, really, right?
you're not getting that email out of me. I'm sorry. I know you want that because I'm going to be critical, but it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, from my own experiences and what I've seen through this past, 3-4 months, I don't think there's a want or will or desire to shift the culture or evolve from Hockey Canada. I think they're content with status quo. I think they love the power and control they have. And they're not going to be told what to do. And they're making that perfectly clear. I mean, we've seen the new chair of the board come out and say the media hasn't been fair to them. Like how insulting is that to the victims? How insulting is that to Canadians that are paying for a slush fund? We saw the women's national team write a letter demanding massive scale shifts. And then we see the CEO that they won't replace or ask to step down, handing them the medals. I don't believe that there was a coincidence there that he was handing the medals. I think that was a statement. So to me, I have very little faith in them. I'm kind of disgusted by them, and I'm going to say it again here, and I've said everywhere I can. I genuinely hope that the corporate partners and the government do not give them any money until we see true tangible changes, because it's the only time in the history of the culture that there's been an opportunity like this where everyone is saying this isn't right and we need to evolve. But the moment, if every time they do something performative, which they've done about 4 or 5 things, their proposal, like their action plan I wrote an op-ed for the Globe and Mail, and it had more substance and depth. I had 24 hours to do it than their action plan. And I'm like, really? Like, seriously? Like that's the best you could. I did this in 24 hours, and that's the best you could come up with you know 150 million or whatever in the bank and everything else you have at your disposal. Come on. So to me, it's they can't let them off the hook.
Yeah.
And at some point, they're going to feel the pressure and need to evolve because they need that money.
Yeah, and money talks. And I mean, you could kind of see that when sponsors started pulling out, I believe it was the World Juniors. You could see them start to scramble a little bit. And if more sponsors had done that, I'm sure there would have been probably a lot more response, at least a lot quicker.
And it's wild too that people go, well, you know, there was nobody there because it was August. And I'm like, this is Edmonton, Alberta that lives for hockey. In June, the Edmonton Oil Kings were in the league finals selling out. Same rink in June.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that 2 months later, they couldn't sell out the World Junior Championships? Come on. That's a crock.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But so you did bring up, you know, recently during the Women's Worlds, chairman of the board or chairperson of the board, Andrea Skinner, joined TSN and kind of, like you said, woe is me, the media is not handling this well, or us or whatever. You had quite the long response on Twitter in real time. Kind of looking back at that now, has your response changed to that at all? Would you like to elaborate on any of that? Like, what is your thoughts on, you know, her kind of stepping in and being like, oh no, we don't have a problem?
She's just the first time I was concerned about the person in charge right now is when one of her first comments after she took the position of chair was that it's an incredibly diverse board. I think I was drinking coffee and I almost spit it out. Like I had a spit take. I was like, did you really just call this board diverse? Like it's laughable. And to go from that to saying it, she doubled down on that in that interview. And then she also started talking about their action plan, which again has no substance or depth. And then started talking about everyone being unfair to them. Meanwhile, she's been in these meetings. She's been a part of this. And you know, like, no, you don't get there aren't two sides to this. There's right and wrong.
Right.
And you're unwilling to take accountability and to evolve. So you're wrong. And I can't in good conscience give her the benefit of the doubt, give that board the benefit of the doubt, or give the people running Hockey Canada the benefit of the doubt, because they've done nothing to earn it. They could have been so far ahead of all of these things.
Absolutely.
And beyond just PR ahead, they have the means and the ability to create proper programs to ensure that these things don't exist, and to ensure that when they do, they're less frequent, number one, and number two, that people have evolved. They have a platform and an opportunity to create a culture that is safe and equitable and that everyone feels good in. And they've failed to do that time after time after time with these people in charge. So with those people there, like, oh, now you're going to get it overnight. Your messaging isn't good, but you got it now. So you can't even say the right things. How can we expect you to do the right things?
Right.
So I guess I'm doubling down on my previous tweet because I have no positives to add at this point. I haven't seen anything where I'm like, and if they did, I would give it to them. Like, I'm not here to burn them, you know, but I just haven't seen it. Like, literally, like, I haven't seen it from them. I haven't seen it, you know, in their actions, in their words, in any of it. So
it's been a lot of hollow statements.
It lacks substance. It's fluff.
You know, you say that they say they want to improve the culture. What will it take from Hockey Canada to prove that it's doing just that? I mean, like you say, they haven't done it yet, but what will it take to prove that?
I think at this point, the only way they can is to wipe it.
Start over.
I think you need a new leadership team. I think you need a new board, and I think it needs to come from diverse minds, diverse backgrounds, who love the sport as well, but who aren't going to protect the sport from itself, and who are going to stand up and say, no, this isn't okay and this needs to change now. So that to me is like, you need to start from scratch.
Absolutely. I think honestly right now that's probably the only way it's going to at least get the fans faith in them back, or their support back, is going to be a complete rebuild. All right, well, we want to talk about some fun things before we let you go, because we, like I said, enjoy having you on. You work with a lot of prospects, so we got prospect tournaments going on right now, so we're going to pick your brain a little bit. What are some things that you kind of look for in film when you break it down with prospects, or what are you kind of looking for when you talk to these players about their tournament games?
If you're walking in, so I had a player I was talking to today.
I don't know if you can give player names or not, but we'd love to hear some.
I'll keep the player's name off, but if you're walking into an NHL camp, or even a major, any camp, any tryout, and like, let's say you're a walk-on, you're trying to earn a contract. You're trying to open eyes, and not only the eyes of the team that brought you in, but if you're at, let's say in Traverse City, there's 6 teams there, 5 teams there. Every GM and scout from all the organizations are there. You're trying to open eyes for 5, 6 teams and say, no, my draft year was during the pandemic, and I didn't play hockey for a year. And so I'm that good though. But that's got to be your mindset going in, that I would have been a pick, and you should give me a contract because I'm that good. With that though, you have to realize that going in, the prospects who are drafted by the teams are likeliest to get the power play and penalty kill time. So, and that's fine. They should be getting it. Those are their picks. They want to, develop and progress.
And they want to see what they have.
They were picked. They earned that right by being picks. So now, what are you going to do to stand out? What are you going to do, shift in, shift out, to stand out? People on the internet today are all over Arbor Jackeye. I didn't see the hit where the player got hurt, but he laid out 4 or 5 players today, knocked a guy out, dropped a guy with a right, in a fight, and he made sure he was noticed every shift. And Arbor Jackeye signed an NHL contract last year doing that, as playing his OA season in the OHL. What are you going to do to stand out? When you finish your checks, don't just pin the guy. Don't go to hurt him. Don't go to be dangerous or anything like that, but show everyone in the rink how hard you hit. When you get an opportunity to finish a check, don't just, curl off. Finish every single check. Be in the proper positioning at all times, because if you're off by, half a foot, 6 inches, 3 inches, and now an all-man rush happens because of you, well, that's on you. You know what I mean? Like, your positioning matters. Even the ozone, don't leak in if you're the high guy too soon. Wait, time it. Time everything you do. When you're reading a play and the puck's going to leave, and your team has full possession and you're a winger and you're a power forward, blow that zone with intent and purpose. So when you get that puck, you're generating speed and you look like Chris Kreider coming down the wing.
Yeah.
Like no, really though.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
You have to go with that type of intensity. You have to go with that type of determination and drive to show that you deserve a contract, because guess what? Every scout is fighting for the player they drafted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, yes, they might fight for you too if they brought you in, but you got to prove that you're not only good enough to play these levels, you got to prove that you're better than the prospects they've picked.
Yeah.
And if you're a picked player, there's people that are, like, yeah, you might be on top of the hierarchy today, but there's some hungry people behind them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You have to show something every shift that makes you stand out. You have to be memorable every single shift. And that might be, I try and tell forwards, if you leave a game with 5-5-5, you've had a pretty good night. 5 good hits, and depending on the player, if you're a smaller finesse guy that's controlling the puck the whole time, it's a different story. But 5 good hits, 5 good passes, 5 good shots on net. If you can get to 15, people are going to notice you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's sort of what I focus on. I have another period to break down later, and it sucks. It's better in season when they get their clips of just their shifts as opposed to going on YouTube and having to scroll.
I was gonna say, and the quality is probably a little bit better too. Right now I'm like on YouTube with them, and I'm like, okay, 1 hour 26, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta rewind, and you can't like scroll, like you gotta like manually do it with the pad. And I'm like ready to throw my laptop. But I had left hockey. I had stopped working in the sport, and then mid last season, one of my former athletes is in the OHL. He was playing in Kitchener, and I didn't like his first half. I still pay attention and watch a lot of my guys. Absolutely.
And I didn't like his first half, and I'm like, no, you're a better hockey player than that. So right around the mid-season at Christmas time, I grabbed him and I said, all right, we're breaking down video weekly, and you're gonna listen. And then he went, okay. And then by playoffs, he had done some, and he was kind of buying in. And I said, all right, here's the deal. You want me to stay on? You just have to blindly have faith in me.
Yeah.
You just have to listen to what I say. Yeah. Trust me. And if you do, I'm in. If not, hey, you're my buddy. I'll see you, and we'll play tennis or go golfing together, and when I'm in Sudbury. But otherwise, good luck, because I'm too busy. I'm too busy. And he went, okay, I'm in. And he went, and I think he had 9 goals in 12 playoff games. Nice. For Kitchener, and Mitchell Martin went to the second round with beat London, and then went to the second round, lost to Windsor. The Kitchener team that wasn't supposed to, go that far, and he had over. I think he was, when he got knocked out, he was top 5 or 6 in the playoff scoring. So he's like, all right, now you got to train me this summer. And I went, what?
Dang it.
What do you mean? He's like, well, we can't stop now. Look at this progress we just made. Like I just lit it up. Like, we got to keep going. Mm-hmm. I went, shit. What did I get myself into?
Yeah.
So I actually,
you were too good of a coach there, Brock.
Well, yeah. So I went back. He spent half of his summer, every second week, he would drive down and live at my place in Toronto. And then weeks when I didn't have speaking gigs or I wasn't on the road, I would go visit my parents up in Sudbury, and it was nice. I intentionally booked a little bit of a quiet summer. So I got to work with him, and we were in the gym daily, on the ice daily, and he's going to surprise a lot of people this season. He's going to have a massive year in the OHL, and I'm really excited for it. And now he's like, yeah, so we should get these guys to come work with us next summer, and we can do. And I'm like, oh, geez, sucked right back into this. I'm in hockey, I'll never leave.
That's the beauty of this sport, man. Once it gets you, it's hard to get away, because it's one of the best games there is, and that's why. I'm such an advocate for wanting everyone to be able to play and be included and be part of this, because I love this game so much. I know you do. I know Matt does. We all of our viewers do, because hey, if they didn't, they wouldn't be coming to watch some of these podcasts, right?
Totally. No, and honestly, I do love hockey. It's the greatest sport in the world. I thought when I left it in 2019, I was done working in it. And here I am back, giving my time to it, but I missed it.
Yeah.
Like I really loved, like, I had a smile on my face every day this summer. And that's even awesome. When I was on the road, like, we would do workouts over FaceTime or Zoom.
Yeah.
Like we would make it work, and we had a phenomenal off season, and people are coming up to him like, what did you do? And it was a nice little, I'm like, yeah, I still got it, but but no, he worked really hard, and I'm excited to see what he does this year, because I think it's going to be pretty special.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we will certainly keep an eye on him, and I'm sure Matt will be talking about him on Prospect Corner, that gets released on Sundays, coming up in the upcoming year or so. But Brock, we just want to take time and thank you again for joining us today. Great talking hockey, inclusion, a little bit of Hockey Canada, and then of course your work with prospects and everything else going on. So thank you for taking the time, and please feel free to come back and talk more hockey whenever you have free time, which it sounds like you really don't, but you are always welcome to come join us at any time.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me and sharing your platform with me.
Absolutely. Again, another huge thank you to Brock McGillis. I mean, holy cow, what an interview. Yeah. He was awesome. So, all right, well, let's move on to our articles of the day segment before we wrap things up. So I'll begin today. My article is by Mason Galina, I believe one of our newer writers here. First I'm hearing of the name. So very interesting. I enjoyed this piece, but their piece is Devils need to keep Alexander Holtz in Utica for now. And, one of my good friends, one of our show's good friends, Chrissy Flannery, is big on Alexander Holtz. And I believe it was saying he needs to have a big show me season this year. And, Mason kind of points out why a season at Utica, or at least the start of the season at Utica, would be much better for Holtz's game and development. So, again, that is Devils need to keep Alexander Holtz in Utica for now, by Mason Galina. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Mason. But yeah, Matt, what is your article for today?
Well, that article is really good. I edited that. And,
that's right.
Yeah, his second article at the Hockey Writers, a great second piece. His first one was an editor's choice, so off to a good start, Mason. So thanks for your first one featured on the Hockey Writers podcast. So you're off to a good start.
There you go.
All right. Well, I've got one from one of our more veteran writers, Ryan Spores. This is a bad name too. Ryan Sporher. I don't know if you pronounce the Z, Ryan, but hopefully I said it right. 5 signs Canadians are in fact still rebuilding in 2022-23. Ryan's our credentialed writer for the Montreal Canadiens, so keep up with his articles, because he's on top of a lot of the stuff the Canadians are doing. So this article, he goes basically 5 things why they are still rebuilding. Because this happened. Joel Edmondson saying rebuilding, that was last year. We're ready to take the next step. And that's what he said that was a quote from him. And Ryan goes through 5 things why that is not the case. That they are still rebuilding. They're not ready to move on. I mean, I said on the preview show, Montreal's Canadiens have done it before, where they've been bad and then they've rebounded the next year and been good. So it's not out of the question. But, he goes through 5 things. One of them, I won't spoil them all, but one of them is because Connor Bedard is in the next draft. So
Yeah.
don't be too good yet.
Yeah, that was
Do
definitely
anything.
one of the 2 points. I'll just say point number 3 was the other one that I thought was probably the main point for this. But yeah, the Connor Bedard being in the draft and Mitchkoff and a
Yeah.
few other guys. I mean, this, like we've talked
So
about
many good
numerous
guys.
times, Matt, this is the deepest draft we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so don't be too good yet.
Yes. Well, number 3 is no Carey Price, and that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, they don't have, I mean, Jake Allen's good, and he's he's been a number 1, but is he good enough to be a number 1 all year for a playoff team? That's the big question. So check out this article at 5 signs that was the title, I got the title right. 5 signs Canadians are in fact still rebuilding in 2022-23, and that's by Ryan Sporer, our credential writer here at the Hockey Writers for the Canadians. Check out his article and of course, all the Canadians writers. We've had a few on the preview show. They've got a great team of writers over there. So check out all their articles too.
Well, that's going to do it for today's edition. So thank you for listening to this special episode of the Hockey Writers podcast. Right now, Matt and I have been doing a daily team preview, and we're trying to get all 32 teams out. So that has kind of taken the precedent for this show, but we had a special guest with Brock McGillis and wanted to make sure we got him on and out to everyone. So again, thank you to Brock for joining us. Make sure you're checking out all of our great content at thehockeywriters.com. You're signing up and subscribing for our YouTube channels, follow along with all of our team shows, and signing up for our newsletter at themorningskate.io. From Kyle Knopp, Matthew Zator, and special guest Brock McGillis, this has been the Hockey Writers Podcast.